Chido lived alone in a small hut on the outskirts of Mupfure village, deep in the heart of Zimbabwe. From the moment she moved in, she felt a strange presence in the hut. During the day, a cold shiver would run down her spine, and she would feel as if someone was watching her. The walls seemed to whisper to her, and she saw mysterious shadows moving about. At night, it was even worse. Ghostly images of a woman and a baby would appear, their cries echoing through the hut. The woman's high-pitched, hysterical screams and the baby's wails were more than Chido could bear. She would lie awake, clutching her blankets, her eyes darting around the room. She was terrified and uneasy, but she didn't know what to do. Each night, the visions seemed to grow stronger, more vivid, as if the spirits were becoming bolder. The villagers avoided the hut, leaving Chido isolated with her fears. She began to dread the setting of the sun, knowing that another night of terror awaited her. Chido was determined to find answers, but the truth to understanding the haunting presence in her home would lead her to uncover a heart-wrenching tale of love, betrayal, and sorrow. Each night, Chido's sleep was disturbed by the same horrific visions. The woman dressed in ragged clothes would appear at the foot of her bed, holding a lifeless baby in her arms. Her cries were haunting, filled with sorrow and desperation. The baby's cries, though faint, added to the eerie atmosphere. Chido would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. She tried to convince herself it was just nightmares, but the images were too real. The fear was becoming unbearable, and she knew she had to find a solution before it drove her insane. She started avoiding her own home, spending as much time outside as possible, but the presence followed her. The villagers noticed her distress, but no one dared to approach the subject. The hut had a reputation, and many believed it was cursed. Chido's once lively and cheerful demeanor was replaced by a shadow of her former self. Her eyes, once bright and curious, now held a constant look of terror. She knew she couldn't go on like this. Something had to be done, and soon. She decided it was time to confront her fears and seek help from the villagers, hoping they would provide the answers she desperately needed. After weeks of torment, Chido decided to seek help from the villagers. She gathered her courage and approached the elders, hoping they would shed some light on the mysterious occurrences. The villagers listened to her story with grim faces. They knew exactly what she was experiencing, but were hesitant to speak about it. The elders huddled together, whispering amongst themselves, before one of them finally stepped forward to tell Chido about the haunting tale. Sekuru Temba, a wise old man, respected for his knowledge of the village's history, began to recount the story of a woman named Rudo. His voice was low and somber as he described Rudo's plight. The villagers gathered around, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and sadness. They knew this story very well, but it was rarely spoken aloud. Chido felt a chill run down her spine as Sekuru Temba's words painted a picture of a tragic past. The air was thick with tension as the villagers waited for him to continue, their eyes fixed on Chido, who stood trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She was about to uncover a tale that would change her life forever. Sekuru Temba began to recount the story of a woman named Rudo. She had once lived in the very same spot where Chido's hut now stood. Rudo was a beautiful and kind woman who had fallen in love with a man called Mutandwa. When she became pregnant, Mutandwa promised to marry her, but as her due date approached, he disappeared without a trace, abandoning her. Rudo was heartbroken and left alone to face the harsh realities of life. As the months passed, Rudo's sorrow deepened. She would often be seen wandering the village with a vacant look in her eyes, her once vibrant spirit crushed by the betrayal. The villagers pitied her, but felt powerless to help. Rudo's pregnancy was difficult, and when the time came for her to give birth, she was all alone in her small, dilapidated hut. Her cries of pain echoed through the night, but no one came to help her. The baby was stillborn, and the heartbreak of losing her child was more than she could bear. Rudo's mind shattered under the weight of her grief, and she became a shadow of her former self, wandering aimlessly, carrying the body of the lifeless baby and muttering to herself. Rudo's grief consumed her. She stopped talking. She stopped taking care of herself, and her appearance became haggard and ghostly. She no longer ate, and her once beautiful face grew gaunt and pale. She looked like a vagabond, wandering around the village in tattered clothes. The villagers would often find her sitting by the river, staring blankly into the water, or wandering the fields, calling out for the lost child. Her cries echoed through the village, a haunting reminder of her sorrow. The villagers tried to help her, offering food and shelter, but she refused, lost in her own world of pain. As days turned into weeks, Rudo's health deteriorated. She grew weaker and weaker, her body wasting away. One cold morning, the villagers found her lifeless body near the edge of the forest. She had succumbed to her grief, unable to find a reason to go on. The villagers mourned her loss, feeling a deep sense of guilt for not being able to have saved her. They buried her next to her baby's small grave and hoped that she would finally find some peace. But her spirit would not rest, and the haunting presence remained, waiting for someone to uncover her story. The elder's tale left Chido shaken. She now understood the source of the haunting, but it did little to ease her fears. The image of Rudo, wandering in despair and clutching her lifeless baby, was burned into her mind. Chido felt a deep sense of sorrow for the woman who had suffered so much. She realized that the presence she felt in her heart was Rudo's restless spirit, still searching for her lost child. The villagers explained that many believed Rudo's spirit had been tied to the place where she had experienced so much pain. The site where Chido's hut now stood was where Rudo had lived and died, and her grief had imprinted itself on the land. Chido's heart ached for Rudo, but she was also terrified. She didn't know how to help the spirit find peace, and she feared that the hauntings would only get worse. The villagers offered their support, but there was little they could do. Chido knew that she had to find a way to help Rudo's spirit move on, but the path ahead was unclear. She would need to gather all her courage and strength to face the haunting head-on. Determined to help Rudo's spirit find peace, Chido began to research on ways to communicate with the dead. She visited the village's oldest residents, hoping to learn more about Rudo and any rituals that might help. The elders shared stories and old traditions, suggesting various ceremonies that could be performed to honor Rudo's memory and guide her spirit to rest. Chido felt overwhelmed by the task, but she knew that she had to try. One elder, Gogo Masango, suggested that Chido should recreate the life Rudo had lost. She advised Chido to gather items that were important to Rudo, such as baby clothes, a cradle, and anything that might bring comfort to a grieving mother. Chido agreed, though the thought of interacting with the spirit frightened her. With the villagers' help, she began collecting the necessary items. Each day, she felt the presence in the hut grow stronger, as if Rudo was aware of her efforts. The ghostly visions continued, but Chido no longer felt as afraid. She was determined to help Rudo find peace, no matter what the cost. The villagers watched in hopeful anticipation, praying that Chido's plan would succeed. The night of the first ritual arrived. Chido, guided by Gogo Masango, carefully arranged the items she had gathered in the center of the hut. Baby clothes were folded neatly, and a small cradle was placed nearby. Gogo Masango lit incense and began chanting softly, calling upon the spirits to bring Rudo some peace. Chido felt a chill run down her as the air grew thick with a spiritual presence. She could feel Rudo's spirit watching and waiting. As the chanting continued, Chido saw the faint outline of Rudo and the baby. The ghostly images seemed calmer, their cries quieter. Chido took a deep breath and spoke to the spirits, expressing her sorrow for Rudo's suffering and her hope that she could find peace. She promised to honor Rudo's memory and take care of the land where she had lived and died. The air grew colder, and the vision of Rudo seemed to nod in acknowledgement. The ritual continued for hours, with Gogo Masango's chants echoing through the night. By the time they finished, Chido felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, but also a glimmer of hope. She knew that there was still so much to do, but this was a start. Chido's nights grew a little easier after the first ritual, though the hauntings did not cease entirely. Encouraged by the small progress, she decided to learn more about Rudo's life. She spoke to anyone who remembered the tragic woman, piecing together fragments of her story. She learned that Rudo had been a talented weaver, creating beautiful baskets and cloths that were once the pride of the village. Chido felt a deeper connection to Rudo, seeing her as more than just a restless spirit. She learned how to weave baskets and began to weave in Rudo's honor, hoping to bring a sense of closure. Each basket she wove felt like a tribute to the lost woman. The villagers noticed Chido's efforts and began to share more about Rudo's life, their stories filled with both sorrow and admiration. Chido discovered that Rudo had been known for her kindness, often helping those in need despite her own struggles. The more she learned, the more determined she became to help Rudo find peace. The hauntings grew less intense, as if Rudo's spirit was beginning to find solace in Chido's efforts. Yet the journey was far from over, and Chido knew she had to continue her quest for understanding and resolution. With each passing day, Chido felt a deeper connection to Rudo. The hauntings, though still present, were less terrifying. Instead of fearing the ghostly presence, Chido began to feel a sense of compassion. She often found herself talking to Rudo's spirit, sharing her thoughts and feelings. The villagers, seeing Chido's dedication, offered more support. They shared stories of Rudo's kindness and resilience, painting a picture of a woman who had endured so much yet remained strong. Chido felt inspired by Rudo's strength and made a vow to help her find peace. One evening, as Chido was weaving a basket, she heard a faint whisper. It was Rudo's voice, soft and sorrowful, thanking Chido for her efforts. Tears welled up in Chido's eyes as she realized that Rudo's spirit was beginning to heal. She knew there was still so much work to be done, but this glimmer of hope gave her the strength to continue. The villagers, moved by the progress, began to participate in the rituals, offering prayers and support. Chido's journey was becoming a collective effort, and together they hoped to bring Rudo the peace she deserved. The villagers' involvement in Chido's quest brought new energy and hope to Mufure. Every evening, they gathered around Chido's hut, participating in the rituals and sharing their own prayers for Rudo's peace. The sense of community strengthened, and Chido felt less alone in her mission. Gogoma Sango continued to guide them, her wisdom invaluable in the process. Chido noticed that the presence in the hut felt less oppressive, and the ghostly images of Rudo and the baby seemed more serene. The villagers began to share their own stories of loss and grief, creating a support system that had been absent before. The shared experiences brought them closer together, and Chido felt a deep sense of gratitude for their support. One night, during a particularly heartfelt ritual, Chido saw a vision of Rudo smiling. It was brief, but it filled her with renewed determination. She knew they were on the right path. The villagers' collective effort was beginning to make a difference, and Chido felt hopeful for the first time since the hauntings began. The journey was far from over, but they were making progress, one step at a time. The rituals became a daily routine for the villagers, each one bringing them closer to their goal. Chido felt the bond between herself and Rudo's spirit growing stronger. She could sense Rudo's gratitude, and it gave her the strength to continue. Gogoma Sango introduced new elements to the rituals, incorporating traditional songs and dances that celebrated life and honored the dead. The villagers participated with enthusiasm, their spirits lifted by the sense of purpose and unity. Chido felt a deep sense of peace during these rituals, as if the very air around them was charged with healing energy. One evening, as they were concluding a particularly powerful ritual, Chido felt a warm breeze around her. She heard Rudo's voice, clear and serene, thanking her and the villagers for their efforts. The words were filled with emotion, and Chido knew they were making a difference. The presence in the hut felt lighter, and the ghostly images became less frequent. The villagers, encouraged by the progress, continued to support Chido, their collective hope and determination unwavering. They were united in their mission, and each day brought them closer to bringing Rudo the peace she deserved. As the days turned into weeks, Chido noticed significant changes in the hut. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive feeling that had once haunted her was gone. The ghostly images of Rudo and the baby became less frequent, and when they did appear, they seemed more at peace. Chido felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that her efforts were making a difference. The villagers continued to support her, participating in the rituals and sharing their stories. The community had grown stronger through its shared experience, and Chido felt a deep sense of gratitude for their support. One night, as Chido was preparing for bed, she saw a vision of Rudo holding her baby, both of them smiling. It was a beautiful sight, and it brought tears to Chido's eyes. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that Rudo's spirit was finally finding solace. The journey was far from over, but the progress they had made was undeniable. Chido knew that with continued effort and the support from the villagers, they could help Rudo find the peace she so desperately needed. The path ahead was clear, and Chido was determined to see it through to the end. Gogo Masango announced that the time had come for the final rituals to be performed. These would be the most important, meant to guide Rudo's spirit to eternal rest. The villagers gathered in full force, their faces filled with determination and hope. Chido felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. She knew that this was their last chance to bring peace to Rudo and her baby. Gogo Masango led them through a series of intricate ceremonies, each one designed to honor Rudo's life and release her from her earthly bonds. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, and the sound of chanting filled the night. Chido could feel the presence of Rudo's spirit, watching and waiting. As the final ritual reached its peak, Chido saw a vision of Rudo with her baby, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. They looked peaceful, their faces free of the sorrow that had haunted them for so long. Chido felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that they had succeeded. The villagers joined hands, their voices rising in a final prayer. The vision of Rudo and her baby slowly faded, leaving behind a feeling of a profound peace. The journey was complete, but the story was far from over. With the final rituals completed, Chido felt a deep sense of peace settle over her heart. The presence that had once haunted her was gone, replaced by a feeling of serenity. The villagers celebrated their success, grateful for the unity and strength that had brought them together. Chido knew that Rudo's spirit had finally found peace, but the experience had changed her forever. She felt a deep connection to the land and its history, and was determined to honor Rudo's memory in everything she did. The villagers, too, were changed by the experience. They had come together in a way they had never before, and their bonds were stronger for it. Chido's heart, once a place of fear and sorrow, had become a symbol of hope and resilience. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had brought them together and given them a deeper understanding of their shared history. Chido looked out over the village, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. The story of Rudo and her baby would never be forgotten, and their spirits would live on in the hearts of the villagers. The journey was over, but the story was far from complete.